The Senate is about to take a key vote on whether to move forward on legislation that would provide federal protections for abortion rights. It is a federal law that is aimed at guaranteeing abortion rights across the country. It's expected to fail, however, raising the questions of what is next for abortion rights supporters. With the clock ticking, that leaked draft opinion from the Supreme Court showed that the justices there, the conservative majority, may be ready to overturn the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling as soon as next month. So we've got a powerhouse panel to talk about the latest state of play on this crucial issue before the country. ABC News political director Rick Klein, former political director for Hillary Clinton's campaign Amanda Renteria, former Trump administration official Sarah Isgur, both are ABC News contributors, and we welcome all of you. So Sarah, let's start with you. I wanted to ask you about Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. They're two pro-choice, right? They're in favor of women having the right to choose an abortion. Two of the most watched Republicans on the issue. They've indicated concerns about Roe being overturned, but they don't like this bill. They're voting no today on this bill in Congress, which would guarantee protections for women to choose abortion. Why are they doing that?
So this bill just doesn't fit exactly with, I think, what Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski are hoping to do, which is work with Democrats who are also in the middle, Bob Casey, Joe Manchin. Bob Casey is a Democrat who has switched his vote, said he will vote yes on this. Joe Manchin saying he will still vote no. So Democrats still not entirely getting their caucus to vote for this as well. But there is room here in the middle. I think those two Republicans you mentioned, want protection for people of religious conviction who wouldn't be forced to perform abortions when they don't want to. And also the current language in the bill holds out the possibility that you could get an elective abortion up to birth if the doctor finds the mental health of the mother would be improved by having the abortion, which is sort of no limit on abortion, according to some on the right. And so I think there's room here in the middle to find Democrats and Republicans, along with the majority of the country. In the last Pew study, 71% of Americans think abortion should be legal in some circumstances and illegal in some circumstances, and finding something more like middle ground.
The great muddled middle of America has been abandoned in this debate for years. It is unlikely to find common ground this debate today. Trish Turner joins us from Capitol Hill. She's our congressional correspondent. I want to play for you, Trish, what we've heard from the leaders of both parties ahead of today's Senate vote.
It's time to go on record. I ask my colleagues to think carefully about their vote and to reckon deeply about the consequences of a world where Roe is a thing of the past. Tens of millions of women are watching what will happen to the rights they've relied on for decades. And all of us will have to answer for this vote for the rest of our time in public office. Before the day is over, every member of this body will make a choice. Stand with women to protect their freedoms, or stand with MAGA Republicans and take our country into a dark and repressive future.
From inflation to border crisis to violent crime, there's no shortage of problems that deserve attention. But alas, today, Democrats have decided to line up behind an extreme and radical abortion policy. Our Democrat colleagues want to vote for abortion on demand through all 9 months, until the moment before the baby is born. A failed show vote that will only prove their own extremism.
So, Trish Turner, you're up there on Capitol Hill, as you always are for us. You were here, Chuck Schumer, today, very solemnly. Sounded like he was going to lose. He's going to lose. So why is he putting this to a vote today? It seems like theater. And also, if Sarah's right, why not just introduce a bill that actually does replicate Roe and afford some middle ground there?
Yeah, so Terry, you get the real sense up here that there really isn't a lot of common ground, not on this issue. It's just not one of those issues where you find many in the middle, in fact. You talked about the two lone Republicans who you might find in the middle most of the time if the parties weren't so at extremes on this issue right now. And that's Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. So why do it? Senator Schumer wants to, as he said, put every Republican on the record. They think that they have the American people on their side as we head into this midterm election. Democrats facing extremely tough headwinds here. So they think they can use this issue to motivate their base to turn out to vote for more abortion rights supporters, Democrats. And that's why he wants to do this. He wants to put this smack dab in the middle of the midterms. And no better proof of that than this will not be the last vote they take this year. In fact, he said the chamber is going to be voting on this issue, bills similar to this, all the way up until the November election. So this is not the last we hear of this. And again, it's hard to underscore, it's hard to overstate here that Democrats, they really see this as a political issue that will motivate their base. But there is one Democrat I talked to, Senator Tim Kaine. You'll remember he was Hillary Clinton's running mate not too long ago. He is working with Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins behind the scenes. Found out yesterday he's been doing this for about a week. He is taking a bill that they created that essentially codifies Roe, and he is trying to add to it enough meat and enough protections, and also just eliminate some of the restrictions that have been put in place by so many states. He's trying to find some common ground. But again, we're still just talking about 2 Republicans here. And as you know, Terry, you need 10 to get anything through the Senate, 10 Republicans.
To break the filibuster. Exactly. Amanda, if I could go to you on that. Trish talks about how there is no middle ground on this issue, but there is in the polls. Most Americans, as Bill Clinton put it, want it safe, legal, and rare. And some of that is expressed in the middle ground. And I wonder, do you agree with Sarah that there is kind of a middle ground? And are the Democrats pushing past it, or is this all political, just to rile up the Democratic base in order to get votes?
First of all, I think a lot has changed from that first vote that they had on this. And so that's why they're revisiting it. But the reality is no one's going to, or very few people, it's very rare that a senator changes their vote on the same exact bill. But I will say, as we noticed for everyone's reaction when the decision came out, or when the draft decision came out, draft opinion came out, it was a shock for everyone, including Republican Senator Collins, Senator Murkowski, including when it came out. So everyone in real time is trying to address what we do and how you move from here and what it actually means now in states. There's a whole host of staffers who are really looking into, if this opinion comes out, what does it mean for women in their state? The reason I think there's actually a place to make a compromise is because it was such a shocking surprise to most folks. And now you have lawmakers who have to deal with the realities of what women could face with their kids, with what their families could face on the ground. And I think because of that, there will be more work to be had. And I do know we will end up, I trust, we will end up finding this conversation coming back again with a vote. And there's a whole heck of a lot of women, staffers, allies of abortion rights and understanding these things have worked together for many, many years on codifying, thinking through Roe v. Wade. It's why it's always a question in a judicial process. And so I actually have quite a bit of hope that there will be middle ground here. And I also think what we will see is extreme measures where you do have candidates saying they want to strip abortion rights, even in the case of rape, incest, and the life of the mother. There will be consequences politically to that kind of stance. So there's still a lot more to be had here.
A lot more to come. This is a debate that is now really moving from the courts, if the Supreme Court does overrule Roe versus Wade, back into the political sphere. That's the point of what the court is doing. So, Rick, let's take this out of Washington. The polls do show the vast majority of Americans believe abortion should be legal in all or most cases. When the question is asked in various ways, you get various answers, but there's no question it's a country that does not want to outlaw every abortion. So does this translate, do you think, into an election advantage for Democrats? Is Schumer right to stage these votes he knows he's going to lose in order to try and get the issue more prominent in people's minds?
Yeah, the flip side of that, Terry, is that it shows some Democrats an exercise in their own futility to bring this up and to know that it's going to fail. It's kind of a hard message to your own base. People remember that Democrats are in control of Washington, and there's a lot of frustration among the Democratic base about why there hasn't been more progress on a range of issues. So you can add this to the list. I think to your question, Terry, what's fascinating is that while we're covering this from a national perspective, because that's what we do, we're seeing Congress in the act of voting, this is an issue that is set to play out in state houses across the country and in courtrooms across the country, at the local local level. This is going to be a state-by-state street fight to establish ground rules that will be different in all 50 states. And we're already seeing a lot of action in states, red and blue, moving in different directions. So it's impossible, I think, to handicap overall. Will it be better for Democrats? Will it be better for Republicans? I think Democrats, by and large, by the fact that they're here to be ready to lose this fight, this defining fight, that's going to be good for their side to establish the stakes of the election, although there's a lot of other issues out there. But this is going to be, by definition, almost a local issue, a state-level issue that will play differently in different parts of the country at different times. There'll be lots of races and lots of politics that get impacted in kind of sideways directions as a result of this ruling.
And Sarah, let me go to you on that. So what Rick describes is a country where women are in two different categories depending on where they live in terms of what Roe understood as their bodily autonomy and right to make their own decisions, and what the other side understands as the taking of human life. But it means we'll have a regime where it's criminalized, where women who want to have an abortion will be in the shadows, where there will be all kinds of ways of doing that, and a place where, and states where it's not. And so the Republicans, if they do take back control of Congress in the midterms, there's talk that there will be a federal ban on abortion. It'll just end it altogether. Is that realistic? And is it a good thing for women in this country that their rights over their bodies will depend on their address?
Well, let's start with how politics works. Republicans may take the House and the Senate in 2022, but they're not taking the presidency. So there will be no law on anything, really, when if Republicans take Congress in the fall. Joe Biden will veto that, and they certainly won't have the votes to overcome a veto. The question, though, is real for 2024. Presidential candidates will absolutely have to address this. And frankly, for the last 50 years, both parties have been able to draft behind Roe, basically cosplaying abortion talk, because both sides knew that it wouldn't matter because Roe stood in the way of anything they did actually being effectual. So you have on the Democratic side, Elizabeth Warren, for instance, not being able to name a single restriction that she would favor on abortion through birth. You had a Senate candidate even back in 2010 saying it's not a life until it leaves the hospital. On the Republican side, you've had state legislatures passing into law sloppily drafted bills that accidentally, ban ectopic pregnancy removals. And so I think both parties have some vulnerability here when it comes to actually learning a language to talk to the vast majority of their voters. I think we talk a lot about how this might energize the Democratic base. I think it's important to remember that there's plenty of data right now saying this is going to energize the Republican base as well. And the Democrats have some vulnerability here, particularly with voters of color who are to the right of the median Democratic white voter when it comes to social issues like abortion. Democratic pollsters saying they're not sure whether this is actually going to be a winning issue for the fall versus inflation and immigration and other issues that Democrats may want to focus on.
A lot of issues out there, as Rick pointed out. Amanda, finally to you, how do you read the political situation, the politics for Democratic candidates on the abortion issue?
You know, I think this is the first time in my life and the first time for a lot of women where you have that sense of something being taken away, of your privacy being taken away, of this idea that where you live is going to determine how free you are to make decisions about your life. I think that is an important statement about what it means, why you get involved, why to get fired up. I actually think on the women of color issue, many women of color know this particularly affects women of color because of who gets affected by where you can traveling out of Texas, low-income communities. And so I see this as a moment for young women to actually have a voice and say, this is why politics matter. This is why you have to fight for some of the things generations of the past have had to fight for. So I actually see an energizing and an engagement. And I think that's actually good for our politics to have young people and women much more engaged on the things that affect their lives, one way or another.
It does feel like one way or another it's going to be a political issue going forward for a while. Sarah Isgur, Amanda Renteria, Rick Klein, Trish Turner, thanks for being with us.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.